Well, listeners, is it in you? That's how we're going to open this episode. And you might be thinking, what is he talking about today? Well, if you have been around sport nutrition or, whatever, racing for a while, you know that that is the famous slogan for the first ever sport drink, Gatorade. But before we launch it, now we're not talking about Gatorade specifically today, but I do want to give a little history lesson because we're going to be talking about what really you do not need in sport drinks. So that's kind of the topic of this episode. But Dee, before we start, did you want to say something?
Well, when you mentioned that phrase, it just reminded me of a movie I watched this weekend on Netflix. I'm not a huge movie watcher, but we
Yeah,
were like, oh, the weather's crappy. And
yeah.
I don't know, this is just a quick tangent, but the title of this movie was something like It's What's Inside or What's Inside. And so it just totally aligned with this
Oh my
Gatorade
gosh.
slogan.
So I caught you
Uh,
off guard.
a little bit because I had a flashback because this movie was terrible. And
Oh,
I'm like, why did I just waste an hour and a half of my time and etc. So hopefully what we are discussing today is far more valuable for our listeners' time
yes.
than that. But Bob, I also wanted to give a shout out because it was reminding me of something else. What's inside our Patreon community,
Mm.
which we have so many new members. We have some free members. Everyone, you can join our Patreon community for free. We've got some content there, but if you pitch in a few bucks per month to help support the show, you also get some uh, insider access. We've got some other conversations going on behind the scenes, some video content. And so, Bob, I just wanted to give a shout out to those that have joined us on the inside of our Patreon community recently: Shoban and Mike and Marisa, Hillary, PK, Amy, Nicole, Mark, Ty, and Linda are some of our recent paying members who are definitely helping support our show and keep it sponsor free. And so, thank you so much. And for everyone who isn't familiar with Patreon, again, you can check that out. There's an app, or you can go on a website, patreon.com/ISN podcast, and join us over there for conversations.
Super cool that we're getting more people that are kind of engaging with us, because that's what we love to do. We love engaging with our audience and our listeners and everyone from athletes to active individuals to fitness enthusiasts and into people who think they want to become fitness enthusiasts. So it's awesome. And I just want to throw another shout out to everyone who listens because, every so often we do get that kind of doom and gloom, like, God, is anybody listening? Does anybody care? But every so often we get some great interactions, either our Patreon or emails, or you had one in person a couple weeks ago, Dee. It's just really nice
Yeah.
to hear some feedback from all of you listeners. So keep the feedback coming. We love hearing from you, and we also love hearing some future or potential topics that you'd like us to talk about. But let's circle back into today because we're talking about something that I think it kind of I think it kind of bothers us, Steve. Kind of all
Yeah.
this, the evolution of sport drinks, and I'm going to go through the history of it here in a second, but not too much to bore you, just to kind of be more interesting. But there are so many sport drinks on the market, and we don't, I feel like listeners and athletes just get really confused because there's so much we don't know what to choose, right? So you've heard us say, it kind of depends on the context. You have to put in context why we're using this, what's the purpose. But we're going to go through today and pretty much tell you what you should not have in a sport drink. Now, again, we'll put that into context here in a second, but let me take us back because the sport drink market, as most people I think are familiar with, Gatorade was the birth of sport drinks, literally, at least from a commercialized standpoint. And it was in 1965, D. 1965.
Wow.
I know, right? I mean, we're
That
talking, what is that? Is that 60 years ago?
60 years.
60
Holy
years, right?
moly.
And this is cool because not only do I have, I just read an article about this, so I'll try to paraphrase a lot of this just to give a little bit of a history lesson. But I actually spent a little bit of time as the director of sport nutrition at the University of Florida, where Gatorade was born, hence Gator Aid. It was aiding the Gator football team. So let me give you a brief history because I thought this was kind of cool because I forgot a lot about all this. So looking at this, right? It was 1965, and one of the coaches for the Gator football team was very perplexed because a lot of guys were losing a ton of weight, but they weren't peeing. right? So they weren't
Mhm.
urinating. So he actually, and I forgot the coach's name, but one of the assistant coaches, he went to the one of the founders of Gatorade. One of the founders is Robert Cade, and he was a University of Florida kidney disease specialist, right? So think about that, which makes total sense, kidneys, right? But he was like, hey, our guys are losing weight. They're not peeing. Like, what is going on? So, Robert McCade, Dr. McCade, kind of took it upon himself. He got some of his colleagues and started researching this. And I'm not going to bore you with this, but the head coach allowed him to try, or allowed them to try these formulations on the freshman team. So, obviously they couldn't touch the varsity, of course. But
Yeah.
anyway, and they were finding it was working. And let me fast forward because this is where it comes into play into what we're talking about today. Because when they first I just read, the records of this is the combination or the ingredients consisted of obviously water, sugar, because obviously water for fluid, sugar, because he was actually noticing, because they did some testing, although they didn't allow them to do rectal temperature testing on the field, just FYI, but they did blood sugar testing, they did hydration testing on the field, and they found that, blood sugar was getting lower, obviously, right, during a
Hmm.
long practice in the, heat and humidity of Gainesville, Florida. So they put some sugar in there and they're like, oh, well, we need sodium. And then they're like, well, with sodium, we also need potassium because those two electrolytes help. And they added a phosphate because that helps with electrolyte balance. And then they stopped there. And the records indicate that it tasted so nasty, like nobody could stomach it. Even the inventors, the doctors were like, "Oh my gosh." And it was Dr. Cade's wife who said, why don't you squeeze some lemon juice in there? Maybe that'll help. And it did. And so, Dina, this was the birth of Gatorade. And everyone listeners, we'll actually put the link to this article I'm referring to in our show notes because I think it's pretty cool. Maybe I'm just geeking out on that, but you can actually read about the history and how they took off and how they, Stokely, Van Brandt, and then Quaker Oats, and then the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, everything. Like I get super excited about this, but I digress. Let me go back. The original ingredients in Gatorade: water, sodium, sugar, potassium, phosphate, and lemon juice. Now, each one of those, so what is that? That's six ingredients, D. Each one has very physiological roles in the body.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we have that short history lesson, knowing there were six ingredients in the original sport drink, which by the way, they have not really, I mean, they've added a few things, but they haven't really gone away from those ingredients too much. I mean, they kind of got a little crazy and they came back a little bit. And I think
Yeah.
it's just more from a marketing keeping up. But that's kind of shocking to me because what we're seeing nowadays, well, what are we seeing nowadays with sport drinks, D? Like,
Oh
what
my
is it? What's
gosh,
going
Bob.
on?
I know. I feel like what you just mentioned from the original Gatorade formula, like that was pretty darn simple. I
Simple.
mean, it might not have been in the right ratios yet or, taste wise quite there, but like, oh, we covered the essentials
Yes.
for the most part for what that was intended for. But it seems like now when we look at the array of what's marketed as quote unquote sports drinks, uh, the ingredient list is lengthy, which doesn't inherently mean it's wrong or bad. However, when we start identifying each ingredient and how does this relate to hydration, it's all over the map and totally not even related to hydration
Yeah.
or performance per se.
So I feel like there's a lot of marketing in this, but let me stop really quick because I get this question a lot. Sport drinks are different than energy drinks. Okay. So energy drinks have usually some type of stimulant. We're not
Yeah.
talking about energy drinks today. So listeners, just focus on sport drinks because the reason I bring that up is because why do we want to consume sport drinks sometimes? Well, because we want fluid, we want electrolytes, and we want sugar, right? Okay.
Hmm.
Because we want to help, just like the Gator football team, we want to help prevent losing a lot of fluid through sweat, and we want to maintain some blood sugar. Okay. So that said, let's keep going, D. Where are we at here?
Well, where should we start, Bob?
You
I
know,
mean,
I, There are, I don't even know how many. I know you Googled the whole sport drink thing, which is funny
Oh,
because it came up with so many different, like, I don't even know how many sport drinks there are on the
oh, I
market, but
know.
there
And
are some more popular ones. And
yeah,
listen, we're going to call out, like, because we're not a sponsored podcast. Like, who cares, right? I mean, we're going to call it whatever we want
true,
to call out.
Bob. And you're right. I just as one of those fun experiments with the
Yeah.
Google machine, I was like, hey, what are good
Yeah.
sports drinks to see what the interwebs would tell me and what, AI would say. And
Yeah.
so it gave us a very long list of good, in air quotes, sports drinks. And then for the purposes of our discussion, pulling out a handful of these to really compare and contrast in a sense and note, especially compared to this original, Gatorade formula, or just thinking what the intention is of a sports drink, these other ingredients that are not in line with what we need in a sports drink or what is unnecessary, highlighting those for our listeners. Not only can you save a few bucks from, a $5 sports drink that is really not a sports drink, it's a whole bunch of other things, but like getting more specific to your needs or trying to identify, wow, you're having some GI issues. Did you realize it could be something in the sports drink that you weren't
Mhm.
paying attention to? So maybe we start with looking at a couple of these. And I don't know, Bob, just naming names, there's no harm
Yeah.
here because we're not sponsored or anything.
Yeah.
So,
Well, indeed, before we start, can we also, because I know we're going to get questions, so let me just answer these questions before they come in. Because listeners, we know you. We're starting to know you a little bit, right? When we're talking also about sport drinks, we're talking about simple sugar-based sport drinks, right? Because we know there
yeah,
are, because that's kind of the context, right? Because whenever I work with athletes, I know, do you do this too? It's like, okay, are we looking at, like, if someone says, oh, do I need a sport drink? We kind of classify kind of the next step in the flow chart is, well, are we talking about simple sugar or non-simple sugar? So we are only focusing on simple sugar sport drinks. We're not focusing on the UCANs of the world, the cyclic dextrins like Scratch
yeah,
has, the Mortons of the world, a lot of technology, right? We're not
right.
focusing on that,
Yeah,
right? We're focusing on the simple because, true to kind of the way we started this episode with Gatorade, that's the birth. That's the basic sport drink.
yeah,
So we are not lumping all sport drinks into one bucket. Okay. So
good.
that said, yeah, let's pick apart because I love the ones, Dina, you identified a few of them. And listen, I'm not gonna mince words. I was appalled and shocked when I looked at the ingredients of the first one you found, which was Powerade grape.
Oh my gosh, Bob. Well, I was just thinking the original Gatorade. So did it had lemon juice, but what color? We probably didn't have blue raspberry and grape and like
Probably
all
not.
those pink and all those colors.
Yeah,
But yeah, this Powerade, which to me is one of the next gen, like from the Gatorade or,
yep,
generation is like,
yep,
oh, now we have Powerade.
yeah.
And Bob, holy moly,
I
there is
mean,
a lot going on
I
with
mean, the
this
first thing that
Powerade.
gets me, yeah, I mean, this is red flag number one to me. If there's any artificial coloring like red 40 and blue one, which is in this
Yeah,
that we're referring to, sorry, listeners, no, don't buy it. Like honestly, their colorings, all of these things are horrible, 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 horrible. Not to mention some other things that I can hardly pronounce, but that is, I mean, that's the first red flag for me. And the other one is also, and I'm sorry, but this is just me, and you're gonna get listeners, you're gonna get some opinions on this episode, but high fructose corn syrup. Like,
oh,
can we just put sugar in there? Can we just put cane sugar, organic cane sugar,
super.
or something sugar,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
Poor,
right.
poor, poor choice.
Poor
Poor
choice, poor
choice.
choice. And then, I mean, I just kind of feel this way today. I'm just going off. And listen, there's calcium, sodium, EDTA to protect color. So you're putting this calcium. So what is it? What did I say? Calcium disodium EDTA to protect the artificial colorings.
Yeah.
Get it out.
Nix. And yeah, artificial flavors. And the other thing I'm going to pick on, this is semi-controversial. Uh, some of these sport drinks also have been fortified with extra vitamins.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Go
Um,
with that. Yeah.
I do not support this for the most part. Maybe there are some instances I could think of, but let's say we're playing soccer game, we're out on the golf course, we're doing a 5K run. More is not better is one of the slogans that I tend to, abuse here, but I do not support the fortification of these sports drinks for the general public.
Yeah,
Um,
not in a sport drink. Like, why do you need
no,
vitamin B12 in a sport drink? So people argue, oh, well, B vitamins help with carbohydrate
yeah,
metabolism. You're using this for sport. Like your metabolism is fine. When you consume carbohydrates and it goes through glycolysis and you're fine. Like you don't need vitamin B12. You don't need vitamin C for activity that might last an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, even 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours. Like I
yeah,
hear you there. Like that's my argument too, is like, why are we putting vitamins and minerals? Well, I know why. But
yeah.
why scientifically are we putting it in there versus a marketing, right? So
Right,
science versus
right.
marketing.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah, this
Okay.
one, yeah. But unfortunately, and it's not to poo-poo these brands, it's to poo-poo the ingredients, right, that are being put in there because simply we need to look at the context of why we're using these. We need
Yeah.
salt, we need fluid, we need sugar.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Yep.
right.
Mm.
What's the next one?
Oh, I know. Well, so the next one, liquid IV, which is not in a ready to drink, bottle, but it is one of the more popular hydration sport drinks that's being marketed out there. I have an issue too, Bob, not just with a couple of ingredients, but like the marketing around
Mm-hmm.
it being a multiplier, hydration multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that is based on its higher sodium content. So I can kind of see that, but I feel like there's a little bit of misleading language there. Again,
Well, I
nuances,
think
but
what does that even mean? I don't like I saw that. I'm like,
I'm
so the liquid
three,
IV hydration multiplier. What am I multiplying?
we're
Like what?
3Xing your hydration. What I
Yeah.
do not understand that
Well,
marketing
and
slant.
it's this is all marketing too, but IV, I mean, you and I as registered dietitians, I'm sure the first thing that came to our mind was hospital setting. Like,
Yeah,
so I'm like,
yeah,
oh, okay. And I get it from a marketing perspective, but again, yeah. So I get that, and then the multiplier, I'm like, I'm already confused before I even go
yeah.
to the ingredients.
And this is where it's like, this is actually dabbling in the oral rehydration solution. So
Hmm.
now we're
Hmm.
talking a product that might be better in this clinical setting. Like, for example, you've been dealing with diarrhea, vomiting, and acute illness. You haven't been able to eat or drink a whole lot, and this could be an application for this kind of product. Whereas in sport, this is potentially overkill with the numerous vitamins that are added. For some people, this dose of sodium, which is over 500 milligrams, is quite a lot.
Hmm.
I support that for my sweaty people, my salty, sweaty people, but it can still be an irritant GI wise or overkill for some people. And so
Yeah.
again, that's kind of like, what is your situation? And if you're looking for a sports drink, this is not probably the one you want to choose, right? And so yeah, I'll
Yeah.
let you add some comments.
No, I think that's perfect context is like again, just because maybe they sit together on a shelf, right, doesn't mean they're for the same purpose, right?
Yeah,
So I think
yeah,
that you bringing that up is huge. I would just bring up one more thing. The first ingredient is this in this is pure cane sugar. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's kind of to my earlier point, like just put sugar in there instead of getting
yeah,
fancy. But
yeah.
why is stevia in there? Why do we put stevia when we already have sugar? I
Mm,
just usually stevia is because we're trying to get rid of sugar. So why? It's just the why,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Why
yeah.
do we need that?
Our sweet tooths
I
need more
know, right?
sweets or
But
something,
what we
but
also know as we exercise at least longer, right? We know that the affinity for sweets, for our taste buds go down. So again, we prefer more salty, more savory. And again, this could be, again, it's context. If you're an ultra runner, cyclist, hiker, fast packer, whatever, swimmer, you're not going to like a lot of sweet later in your event. So
yeah,
again, it's just one of those things I just scratch my head. I'm like, why? That just doesn't make sense. And of course, there are a lot of added vitamins to this
yeah,
one also. Yeah.
yeah. Ooh, Bob, the next one is one of my faves to pick on.
Is it? Oh, I
Yeah.
can't wait for this one. So
Well,
pick away.
I do have a slight feeling of guilt, but It
This one
just
doesn't make sense.
if you're going to
Uh,
spend your money,
yeah.
I don't care for this product. The
Yeah.
body armor, the
Okay.
original energy or sport drink body armor, not their sugar
Yeah.
free or some of the
Right.
other. But the thing that cracks me up, so first ingredient is water, okay, and
Yep.
then cane sugar. But then we have coconut water concentrate.
Yeah.
And if you look, Bob, we'll put a couple screenshots over on our Patreon community as well.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about Gatorade, salt was part of this, sodium. And so if we look at the profile of this drink, the sodium content is virtually nil.
It's 30
And that
milligrams. What does that
coconut
do?
water is
Yeah.
jacking up the potassium content. We
Yeah.
we need more sodium than we need potassium.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I see this as an imbalanced or misconfigured formulation for a sports drink.
Oh, it's amazingly misconfigured. And that's one of my big arguments too. I'm like, because I remember when I first looked at this, I'm like, is that a typo?
Yeah, I
Because
know.
that shouldn't be in the sport drink realm when it's so low sodium. Now, again, let's talk about context. Would you drink this? Maybe here's my thought. Do you like you were talking about liquid IV, maybe more clinical or that kind of thing? Okay, well, would you drink this maybe like as a substitute of water because it has so low sodium? Well, probably not because it has 29 grams of sugar.
Yeah,
And, it's like, I don't know where this fits. I don't know. I can't put it anywhere really,
yeah. I
right? I
I
mean,
know.
I can't
I'm almost
justify anything.
speechless.
Yeah.
Like what? But
Uh,
along those lines, some of the other ingredients. I mean, there's again, this is fortified with a number of minerals and vitamins, some of which are synthetic forms like folic acid. We've
mhm.
got cheapy magnesium oxide, which is,
Yeah.
okay, magnesium's an important electrolyte. That's not the best form of
Yeah. Put the
magnesium to
one
get.
that actually works better in there. Like, come on, people.
Yeah, yeah.
If it was like the BD sport drink, right? The Bob and Dina sport drink,
Uh-huh.
we would rock that, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, maybe we
Uh-huh.
should. Hmm, I
We'll
have an
talk
idea.
offline.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Anyway, is that it for that one?
Yeah, yeah.
Because this one that you chose, I love that you chose this because I actually get this a lot from my college athletes, to be honest with you, is Pedialyte, but Pedialyte
The
Sports. Because
sport.
interestingly, like we've used Pedialyte. I mean, this goes back way, way back when, when we were interns in hospitals as dietitians, right? With
Yeah,
Pedialyte and all that stuff. But yeah, so Pedialyte was like, oh, hey, maybe we should do a sport one because, people are jiving on our thing here. So
yeah.
I'm so glad you saved this one for last because I'm looking at the ingredients and I'm even more appalled than what we just saw.
I'm laughing out of part disgust and
Yeah,
part like shock factor. And that's
yeah,
how it's coming out is a laugh, but really I'm crying inside.
yeah.
And so it is important to know the Pedialyte Sport comes in a liter bottle, not a half
Oh, right, right,
liter or a
right,
16
right.
ounce. So looking at the nutrition facts label or the nutrition information, it is very high sodium,
Super high. It's
right?
almost 1400 milligrams.
Yeah, yeah. So, I
Ooh,
mean, be mindful of that if you're using
yes,
this because you
yes.
could get some GI issues if this is too much. Like if you're slamming this whole thing within a 15-second window and then you feel some nausea. I mean, the sodium alone could be an issue. But then, Bob, I mean, my eyes went to a number of things in the ingredient list. Like also, it says contains milk ingredients. Is that
Hmm.
from the galacto oligosaccharides
Yeah, it has
component?
to be. Yeah,
And
because
that is
galactose
another
milk. Yeah,
form of a sugar.
right.
I don't know the scientific or biological basis for putting that particular source in, other than it's maybe a slower, not slower,
Mhm.
but a easier digestible form. I'm not
Well,
sure.
well, back in the days, D, check,
Oh,
check. You see, I slipped that one in.
yes, thank
There
you.
was a sport drink on the market. I don't even know if you want to call it a sport drink called G Push.
That's
And
right.
some of you listeners who've been in the endurance world for a while, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, I totally remember that. It wasn't around a while, but it actually had galactose, right? That was
That's
the
right.
main sugar in it. So I suspect there's something around here with that because if you look at the label of this Pedialyte Sport, the total carbs are 25 grams, but the
Yeah,
added sugars are 14.
that's it.
So perhaps it was in an effort to try to lower the added sugars, or I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
But it is
Yeah.
kind of interesting because now we kind of ruled out a certain group of athletes that might not be able to use this. And those are
Hmm.
ones who are lactose intolerant or sensitive.
Well, also, we have a couple artificial sugars
Oh,
in
Dina,
this.
that's where I started and that's where I stopped.
I mean, let's take a breath collectively.
Oh, okay.
But yes, we've got a couple things going on there, Bob, that I know are raising our blood pressure and our heart rate.
So much. And this is actually I wanted to mention this along with the sodium because you were mentioning, wow, high amounts of sodium could actually exacerbate or trigger GI symptoms. And listen, it's probably not the sodium in this one. It's probably these two. I know for one, I know there's research on one of them that links it to potential GI distress, right? I don't know for the other one, but yeah, why? Again, you're putting a sugar in here, the galacto-oligosaccharides, right, which you mentioned, and now we've got two artificial sweeteners, but these are horrible, right? It's not like stevia or monk fruit. Now we're talking sucralose, horrible.
Yeah,
Like, seriously, people, you need to get sucralose out of your life. Like, break up with it. Seriously, right? Because that's the one that I've read research to that can actually trigger GI issues. I'm not sure about the other one, the asulfame potassium. That is also another artificial sweetener, but I'm just not well read on that at all in terms of GI distress. But why do we want to, like, why
yeah,
even put two in there? I'm not a food scientist, so maybe a scientist is going to hop on our Patreon account and say, oh, this is the reason why. That'd be
yeah,
great. Help me understand that. But
sure.
I mean, two, D.
I mean, it must also be cost efficient or whatever for
Probably.
those that need something that, quote unquote, ooh, I'm using that too much too,
Yeah.
but it tastes good
Yeah.
to some people. And if
Right.
they're
Right.
sick, which don't buy the sport drink if you're sick.
Yeah. Seriously.
But
Just do Pedialyte.
anyways, if your
Yeah.
palate is trained to need sweet tasting things, I guess, part of this might be using these artificial sweeteners because they are less expensive
Mm.
to keep the cost down, but you are maybe costing your health. So that's something to ponder.
Well, I think if you have an affinity for sweet things, we need to look at a few episodes we did a while back on metabolic efficiency training. Like
Ah,
once you optimize your blood sugar, your sweet cravings actually go down. So maybe
yeah,
we take a couple of steps back, right? So
yeah.
that was my first thought. But yeah, this was, I mean, I feel like this wasn't like a you know what session where we just wanted to pick some out and kind of highlight all the things that are bad with them. We just wanted to really bring to fruition that, listen, we actually only need, and when we're talking about simple sugar sport drinks, we only need a few ingredients. And listen, Gatorade was onto something. And that's why obviously they actually created their Gatorade Sports Science Institute in the 80s, I think it was. I mean, that's all we really need, D. So I think, a lot of what we're seeing these days with simple sport drinks is a lot of trying to get ahead of the competition, and it's a marketing game. And I don't believe that our listeners really need that.
Well, we would love to hear your input. Listeners, if you would head over to our Patreon community, join for free if you're not a member. Let us know your take on some of this stuff. Are you paying attention to your sport drinks? What do you use? And we'd love to hear that.
And D, here's what I'm going to do in our Patreon
Yeah.
account for our paid members, because
Yeah.
we love everyone, but I do want to give my special homemade sport drink
Oh,
recipe because
yeah.
I give this to every athlete I work with, and it's just an alternate, right?
Yep.
That you can play with a little bit, and yeah, you can make your
Okay.
own. Like we used to make our own back in the days. Ooh, that's a second check of the day.
Ooh, we are
But
on fire.
I'll do that. I'll put that special homemade sport drink recipe that is kind of a no BS, if you will,
That
in
sounds
our
good.
Patreon account for our members.
And then I'll add a second one if it's not already aligning with something close. I'm guessing mine's a smidge different, but ooh, fun. All
Yes.
right. Well, thank you, listeners, for being here with us, and we hope you enjoyed this show. We will close out for now and hope to catch you on our next show.